Hello and welcome to COVID Conversations here on WNCU 90.7 FM, streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm your host, Kimberley Pierce Cartwright. I'm the News and Public Affairs Director at WNCU, and we're using this Zoom platform to talk about how COVID-19 is affecting our world. The coronavirus pandemic has changed our lives. We've separated from extended family and friends, and we've had to learn new ways to cope with isolation, with stress and anxiety that's come from this so-called new normal. The new normal for parents with children who have disabilities adds a totally different twist to life, especially when it comes to schooling. With me to talk about schooling and life with her children who are both on the autism spectrum is Dudley, a professional communicator and a mom. Hi, Dawn. How you doing?
Hi, Kimberly. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good. I think I like that title, mom. What's it like being a mom?
Wow. Being a mom is an honor. I think that most people who have the title really feel blessed to hold the title and take the title very seriously. Perhaps the most serious title that you could have among titles, if blessed to have the opportunity. Um, Being a mom, my first example for me was my own mother. And she did a phenomenal job. And I tried to duplicate many of um, her parenting skills and wisdom. I don't always do the best job, but I try my best. And I think that, like anything, when it comes to life, it doesn't come with a manual. You just try your best and pray for the best. So put your best foot forward. So, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's unpredictable. And I hope that in the end that my children say the same things that I can say about my mom, that I try my best. And I hope in the end that they are productive citizens and that they have a fulfilling life and utilize some of the things I've taught them.
Yep. And when we talked about you and raising your children, you shared with me that both of your children were on the spectrum for autism. So I'm sure that that's been a tremendous challenge trying to keep up with schooling with your kids. So let's talk about the relocation of the classroom from the classroom to your home with your children who are both on the spectrum. What has that been like?
Well, I like many parents. Well, I guess everyone is different depending on where your children are being educated. My children receive public education. They go to a public school. One of my children attends a charter school, but very similar to public education structure. And I think, like most people, thought that kids would just be home for, a short time. I mean, maybe they would have finished out the semester at home and the rest of the year at home, and that the fall of 2020, they would have returned to the classroom. But as we know, some people, not all people, have fully returned to the classroom. And it's here we are a year later. So that transition was tough. But, at first it was kind of interesting because I thought about homeschooling at first, many years ago, especially after my children were diagnosed and you began to explore educational opportunities. I thought, maybe homeschooling would be a good option for my children. I realized I didn't think it was the best thing considering my choice in career and wanting to focus on those goals. But when they came home, I thought, okay, we'll make these adjustments to home. And this gives me an opportunity to see how it is to be at home and support them. And it was shocking, to say the least. We made the changes, like, getting two desks for them, setting up their learning spaces, making sure they had the tools for the classroom. But because of their challenges, and some kids not even without challenges, had the difficulty of adjusting to this virtual platform. While it does allow you to have connectivity, for a person who's a learner who needs someone to touch their shoulder or needs to make a more natural eye contact, or doesn't need to be distracted by a billion faces on the screen or what's going on in Susie's house. It's overwhelming. It adds to the layers of complexity that they experience as people on the spectrum already. So I remember one of the first times that I just like felt like banging my head against the wall. My children were in the loft space in our house, and we had one child on one end, the other child on the other end. And they want the kids to wear headsets because it controls the sound. But I need to hear what's going on to support them, whether it's for educational behavioral needs. And you hear both of the teachers talking, and one of the teachers said, "Ms. Dudley, can you please, move your child to another room, your other child?" And it really, when that person said it, I was like, okay, let me adjust. But then I said, like, move them where? Then that means I'm not able to supervise him. It had become a very, it was a stressful moment that I wasn't sure how to resolve and maintain the control that was necessary to keep them safe at home. So for us, it has been, my husband and I, when I say us, it has been challenging to move them home. And even though both my husband and I come from backgrounds of parents who are educators, we are not ourselves. And I even think my friends who are educators who have brought their children home, it has been um, difficult. I mean, you feel like you're always neglecting something. And becoming a teacher to your child, you're supposed to be your child's first teacher. And you take that seriously. And then you begin to realize, I need more support. And I think that's the part that has been a disconnect. It was realized almost, I feel like, too late, in particular for children with special needs. Parents need more support, figuring out how to get children with special needs in a position where they were able to have a more natural learning experience if they needed it. I felt it needed to be resolved sooner. So overall, to answer your question, it's been challenging for us. And I think more so challenging for our children who start to develop more behavioral issues because of the isolation and the stress and anxiety experience being at home, not because of what we put on them, but because of not seeing people, not being on the same schedule, having to talk to your teacher in this way and go into a breakout room when you get in trouble or when you need reinforcement for your behavior. It's just it's unnatural. It's been unnatural for them.
So how has it been with the transition for your children from the classroom into your home? Has it affected their behavior? Are they happier, do you think, in this environment? So how has it affected them?
Well, I think at first my children like being at home. They like, waking up. Maybe I didn't let them go to the computer in their pajamas, but they didn't have to have that same rush of getting ready in the morning. So they really liked it. My son goes to school, it requires him to wear a uniform. So he just used to put his uniform on top of his pajamas and go sit down at the computer. And he loved it. So it worked out well. And then they were able to eat at home with us, hug on us, cuddle with us in between, and distract us in our meetings and, always have access to us. But then when the stress started coming more and more, because there are schools that say attendance is mandatory, you are being graded, and you feel that pressure, you know that you need your child to be fully engaged and you're reinforcing terms. So then you have your work responsibility. Your first responsibility is your kids. So you're trying to do that. In the back of your mind, you're thinking about everything you need to do at work and everything else is on your list. And then so I think that the stress that I was experiencing, unfortunately, I started to project on my children. And then they were already feeling their levels of stress, anxiety. And then us together was just a unfortunate storm. And it just would turn out to be lots of yelling, or not yelling, but more so like, after you get off, you're not going to have access to, or you're going to blah, 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 whatever the thing was. And so then that made us have a more intense relationship when they got off camera, or even while on camera, it was distracting for them because they were worried about getting in trouble. Um, then coupled with like I shared earlier, the isolation and the stress of um, things changing so suddenly and the normalcy seeming so far away. They used to ask me, like, when am I going back to school? Or when will I see Miss blah, blah, blah again? Or when will I see, start asking about classmates and things of that nature. And one of my children really started to started to experience more of this outward expression of her stress. I would say I said her, so my daughter. I already identified who it is, and it would be out of her control. I could tell it was out of her control, and often I found myself and my husband unable to help her bring it in, whether it was through breathing, counting down, taking time out, whatever it be. It just seemed like not much was helping her. And we had to bring in additional, when I say bring in, seek other supports to help deal with her increased behavior issues. And when I say behavior issues, um, her attitude was shifting, she started showing some aggression, those things that were not in alignment with what I was used to seeing. And the frequency became really honestly scary for her more than for me. And what I mean for her, I mean what I felt scary for her and what it was doing to her. And we're talking about in this pandemic how so many of us are changing and some things we're not even identifying. Can you imagine what it is doing to a child who is developed there? We are at our age, we're pretty much, while we still have room to grow, we've kind of been shaped. Children are right in the middle of their shaping process. And on top of what's happening, and for my children, the additional stress they're experiencing, I'm very concerned about the long term effects of what is happening with them being removed from the classroom for such an extended period. Because with my children in particular, there's not much room for error. Yes, children are resilient, but in my opinion, there's not much room for error because what happens today truly does have um, this muscle memory effect for later. And so, to go back to answer your question, I started to see more behavior issues, more anxiety, resistance to my authority with both my kids because they were just at home and there was constant overlap. There was no separation of when we were together for what purposes. Everybody needs a break. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care how much you love your family, your husband, your kids, your mom. Everybody needs a break. And my kids need a break from me and my husband, and we need a break from them. And it seemed like it was never happening. And no matter how much we try to be creative and get out and do science lessons by the lake and the pond, everybody was going to the next level with their emotions. And we weren't really finding ways to truly cope.
So tell me, where do you find help for this? And then maybe talk about you as mom teacher, who is helping you to be able to educate your children?
So I first want to make sure, even though I talked about overall how I feel like the education system need to find out a way to get children back to a sense of normalcy, particularly for children with special needs quicker than they did. I think for the most part, educational institutions did the best they could with the resources they had. So I don't want to seem like I'm bashing that. And I want to give much credit to my particular children, educators, their teachers, and their teams. Both my children, because they have special needs and autism and ADHD, attention hyperactive, ADHD. I can't remember right now what the acronym is. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Because they both have those challenges diagnosed, they both have IEPs, individualized education plans. And that means they have an education team that helps navigate how they receive education. And that is the first team that we went to help and report what we were seeing and how we were navigating this COVID experience. We got some additional support from the psychology team at the schools for my children. And then when particularly my daughter had some issues, we had more engagement with Duke, the Lennox Baker Center, which is where there's a lot of behavioral research that's done there. And I'm talking to her behavioral pediatrician and team on how to best address the challenges that we were seeing. And my children, while they are verbal, they do have some limitations on expressive language. So that makes it a little even harder to describe what are you feeling and how can I help you. So those teams of people helped us with helping our children the best they can, the best they could. The issues still exist. Here we are in March of 2021. The issues have not, they still exist. And we'll have to continue to work on those things and hope to address them, that the long-term effect won't be one that cannot, that won't be destructive for their future. That's just my hope, because I don't know how it's going to impact them or shape who they're going to be 5 and 10 years from now.
Okay, so very quickly, we're running out of time, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk to you all day about this. You're very well versed and definitely have experience. So, final question, really quickly: what do you want your child's educators to know about your experience as a parent having to deal with your children's education at home? Very quickly.
I just want to say thank you for your effort. I said a few moments ago, my particular children, I'm thankful for each of their teachers, their team of the education team that supports the IEP. Thank you. And I want you to know that my husband and I, did the best we could. And I think that most parents in our position have done the best we could. And we just hope that we can continue to work collaboratively to support our kids. In the end, the hope is that everyone wants the best for the child and their outcome. And keeping that in mind gives me hope that we're all working to a greater cause to get them to this outcome of success. So again, my final words, thank you to them. And I appreciate their commitment to education and serving children, particularly those with differences, who need that extra support.
Okay, thank you, my brave friend, for coming on to share your story about your children and their education with us today.
Thank you, Kimberly, always. I appreciate you for listening and allowing me to share my story.
Absolutely. And we're going to thank you, audience, for watching via YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as listening to WNCU 90.7 FM. Be sure to like us, to follow us, and subscribe to our pages to see more of our archive shows. I'm Kimberly Pierce Cartwright, your host. Until next time.